All right. Welcome everyone to How to Grow Your Website in 2017. If you're here for How to Grow Your Website in 2016, John, I think
you might be a little late.
Yeah, it might be a little bit late and you're in the wrong place. But before we get started, I want to kind of lay the foundation for what we're going to do today. John?
Okay, so it's the 24th of January. We're starting in January.
We're starting a little late, getting a late start.
A little bit late, and my prediction this year is that the end of the year is going to be 31st of December.
Well, fingers crossed.
So basically, what we're here to do is to go over a whole bunch of strategies, tips, things that we can foresee, things that we'd like to share with you about the year ahead, things that will positively move your business forward. So that's three of those, I guess.
We're talking about how to grow your site today, and really it's growing three things: growing your traffic, which is kind of the lifeblood of your website; growing your revenue, which I think we can all agree you want to do that.
Yeah.
And then also growing your brand, and that's something a little bit more abstract, but hopefully we can kind of maybe draw a circle around what that is a little bit better.
And it's a little bit harder to measure brand, but we've got some good stuff here that you're going to be able to take away.
And I think one of the things that's difficult about all of this is we can all have our plans for what we want to do for 2017, but there's all these other factors at play that are going to either trip us up or maybe provide us opportunities that we can leverage to improve ourselves this year. So we're going to maybe try to help you navigate some of that today too.
Yeah, get through the maze. I noticed in the previous slide you had the little arrow saying the Google algorithm update was going to be, what's that?
Yeah, I'm going to give you guys all the details and all the Google algorithm. I'm just kidding. But the truth is that, I mean, there are things like that that are going to happen this year that we have to be aware of, and maybe
nobody knows, but we're going to try and sort of do some predicting, but obviously we don't know.
So that's essentially what we're going to do today, is we're going to get you through this maze. So before we go any further, John, let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, this is my partner, John. John?
Yeah, I'm John Cole. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Ezoic, and I've been in online since 99, so I've been around. I always joke that I should have a T-shirt, online since 99. But I used to be in the British military. In fact, I used to be a navigating officer in the Royal Navy.
Navigating the sea, navigating the web.
That's it. I can help you guys. And basically, I've been on the ad side of the fence, so I'm bringing the sort of ad perspective, having run an ad network before, and so I a little bit like a
poacher turned gamekeeper.
Yeah, something like that. And Tyler, how about you?
I'm an award-winning marketer. I'm the head of marketing for Ezoic. I've served as an SEO expert for startup boards. I don't necessarily love that terminology, but I've essentially helped a lot of different sites and a lot of different businesses increase their organic traffic over the years, and so that's a big component of what I'll be sharing today. So combine both the ad side and then also content traffic. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about these elements of your site and basically what the year 2017 holds for it. So without any further ado, today we're going to share with you trends of things that we think you should expect in 2017. Strategies that we think are going to pay off this year, right?
Yeah, stuff that we think that will apply to any site. We've got hundreds of publishers that have signed up to this event. So some of you are running divisions of publishing businesses. Others are small teams or individual owner operators. So a lot of these methodologies, the stuff that we've worked out for you, we think are going to be relevant to anybody who's publishing online.
We also want to kind of point out maybe some of the things that you should avoid in the next 12 months. So there's some things that have maybe reached their limit this year, and we're going to talk a little bit about what those things are today so you can avoid them. And we're also going to give you some additional tips for kind of staying ahead of the game, whether it's site marketing or things you should be doing with the technology on your website. Yeah. So I think we can divide the conversation today into three parts, and John, I'll let you kind of walk us through what those three parts are, because they're not real clear defined lines necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's mobility, for want of a better word, mobile, really. Everybody's been saying for years, oh, this is the year of mobile, but really there's a lot of things that are pointing to mobile becoming the main screen for everybody online, and therefore it's got to be at the top of the list of priorities for all publishers. And so we're talking about monetization for mobile and obviously content for mobile, and then really looking a little bit more broadly at the whole ad space and how you monetize and the changes that are going on in the ad world, fighting spam. We're going to dig into things like fake news, fake ads, all of that kind of thing. and then really looking at industry shifts, things that are happening on a macro level, and particularly with regard to things like security and stuff like that. So we've got some practical stuff that people can kind of dig into, but also a little bit of education if people aren't like right up to the minute with the news. It's pretty hard to keep up. We're hoping to cover all that for you as well.
So you mentioned starting with mobility. I think there's probably no better way to kind of kick off that mobile means business in 2017 than talking about Google's Mobile First initiative. And so basically, if you're not familiar with it, which you hopefully are at this point, but if you're not, we'll kind of explain it to you here briefly. Right now, John, Google has an index for mobile and for desktop right now.
So that's search rankings that I'll see on desktop when I type into Google, that, you know, where that comes in, and then on mobile, those two things are separate at the moment, right?
That's right. So you can think of it as two different sets of results, one for desktop rankings and then one for mobile. And Google is basically saying that we are going to get rid of the desktop one, or we're going to go quote unquote mobile first, which means where your site ranks and how its pages are indexed, they're only going to be looking at your mobile pages now.
So desktop rankings.
Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of sites over the years have really optimized their sites for desktop. And so Google has said that this is probably one of the biggest changes that they've ever made in search. That's a big deal to say that.
And it is, isn't it? Because when we went through Mobilegeddon, which is where people Google was saying, look, we're going to give you fair warning. You need to have a mobile-friendly site. Make sure you do. And then that kind of happened, and the algorithm kind of rolled out over time. But they said that, and they try to grade things in terms of how many sites are going to be affected by each change that they make.
That's right.
This one is going to be about as big as it gets.
And so I think what maybe the misunderstanding was when this was first announced, because I've talked to several publishers that have asked me again, well, explain this to me again. Well, essentially how this works is if you have a mobile-friendly site or you have a responsive site, I think the gut reaction to say, well, I'm probably fine here, right? Yeah. Well, not necessarily, because like what you talked about a second ago with taking that desktop site that's maybe been optimized over time, maybe you haven't paid the same attention to your mobile site. And if that's the case, you could be in store for maybe some heartache this year. So it's really important to start really looking at your mobile rankings and how your site is optimized on mobile, and that includes things like user experiences, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. Yeah,
and actually a good tool, and one that we're big fans of here at SEMrush, and you can look at the difference between your mobile rankings and your desktop rankings really easily by sort of toggling by country. So that's a good tip.
So you may be wondering when that's happening. Well, Google's running experiments on this now, and back in October they said it may take 9 to 12 months to roll out. So it's happening this year and it's being tested now. So at some point we'll get news, I would say probably in a matter of months, that Google is officially rolling this out. And then at some point at the end of this year, we'll get notification that it is completely rolled out. So you're not going to, this one is not something that's going to pass you by. It's going to happen this year.
And I don't think it's going to happen in one day. It's going to happen over a long period of time.
Yeah, a long period of time.
Yeah.
So will it affect my site positively? If you have a mobile-friendly site with little difference in your mobile and desktop versions, probably.
Well, rankings, I guess.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about specifically. If you're optimized on mobile, your keyword rankings do not differ greatly. Your organic traffic on mobile is proportionate to your desktop organic traffic. These are all signs. Your bounce rate, time on site, and page views per visit are not greatly different than on desktop. You can look at those things and they're proportionate. Those things are good. Those things mean that you're probably going to be, in most cases, positively affected by this, because it's going to affect some people negatively, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't have a mobile-friendly site, hopefully you do at this point.
Yep.
If your site's not optimized very well on mobile, but it is on desktop, if your keyword rankings are much worse on a mobile device, these are the signs that maybe you should start paying more attention to this relatively quickly.
Yeah, and it's checking it out on different browsers and different connection speeds and things like that. So it's you benefiting from this, somebody else is going to be, being penalized. So the same number of searches are likely to be going through, but you're either going to be a net beneficiary or you're going to be on the downside.
And we're going to talk about mobile user experience metrics quite a bit more today, because as you're going to find, it's a big part of 2017. And there's probably no better way to start with that to talk about AMP. So AMP, I guess everyone's probably kind of wondering or is trying to predict, is AMP going to be a thing, John?
I would say it is going to be a thing.
I'd argue it's a thing now.
I think it's already a thing now. So for those of you who don't know, Accelerated Mobile Pages, it's an open source project. Really, Google put their full weight behind it. And what it is, it's a set of protocols to make pages load more quickly. That also includes those pages being hosted by Google or being loaded by Google. So you'll see them in the search results. When you type something, particularly news, you'll see the little Harry Potter icon.
Yeah, that little thing over there on the side of your screen.
The little lightning flash. And that will show you that it's an AMP page. That will load quicker. So they haven't said that it's necessarily a ranking factor. In fact, we were at an event last year with the guys from Google AMP. We've been working with them on the project. And they're saying, well, it isn't a ranking factor. And of course, site speed is. So you improve one, I think the other one comes along with it. So I don't think Google are coming out and saying you have to be going AMP if you want to get up the rankings, but I don't think it's necessarily doing you any harm.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about this today, about how this incorporated into a lot of other factors can actually help you quite a bit. So while AMP alone may not be the sole thing that you want to go towards, there are some major pros of moving your site into AMP. So you could almost see it as an investment in your site's mobile future, right, John? So we talked about, things going mobile. AMP is makes your mobile version of your site uber fast, right? Mm-hmm. There are some SEO benefits, whether they are AMP is a bona fide ranking signal or not. It certainly has been proven to be something that has some SEO benefits to it. It's faster for your users, which is good.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can argue that it's worse for user experience. I mean, you could say, because mobile search returns where you've got the gallery, where you sort of flip sideways, and let's say you've got a news story, you can sometimes be flipping between publications. So, the same news story covered by another publication is just a swipe away, as opposed to a back button and then another selection. So the mechanism is still, I think we're still seeing the results of that, but it's definitely faster, and therefore it's good. In terms of the cons, I mean, we've been doing testing, as you would expect. By the way, if people don't know about it, we have this AMP converter, which is a way of making any page instantly AMP friendly and getting it indexed by Google as an AMP page, or in fact the whole site.
And so we've been experimenting with these a little bit, and what have we seen?
Well, you might make less revenue at the beginning. In fact, you're likely to.
But it wasn't this sort of the case a while back with mobile in general?
Yeah, I think you had that sort of adoption phase where people were saying, well, I'm not going to go over to making my site mobile because all of those accidental clicks that I get from people's thumbs on ad sizes that shouldn't be on there because I haven't resized my phone, I'm going to miss out on that revenue, so I'm not going to do it. And there was a slow adoption, but the people who got in there early were the ones who benefited. And actually taking a little bit of pain on your mobile revenue in exchange for getting all of these benefits, I can see the reasons why you should do it. The cons are that it's not yet being universally adopted. I think there's this should I, shouldn't I moment for a lot of publishers. And the alternatives, maybe they're not as attractive as they should be. Things like the Facebook instant articles, where you're publishing your content inside Facebook, and then it stays within that walled garden of Facebook. You can still monetize it, but you're giving your value to Facebook. People could say that you're giving your value to Google to serve the ads, but it is open source. So there's, we're not here, by the way, guys, to give you a definitive list of things that you definitely should do. We're trying to just really give you an overview as to the way we're thinking about it, which might help.
And so the motivation behind AMP is really this idea behind faster page speed, and more specifically faster page speed for mobile, accelerated mobile pages, right,
Yeah.
John? And I think one of the things that that is kind of the underlying cause for why you want faster mobile experiences is because Google wants you to have a better mobile user experience for your website visitors.
Yeah, and it's important not to get hung up on the metrics of site speed. I think it's more important to focus on the user experience metrics themselves, because obviously the whole idea of a faster load speed is that the bounce rates will be lower, the time on site or session duration is higher, and the page views per visit are higher. And that's what actually you're trying to generate. So it's not, from the very first pixel to the last, that time is actually what is the consequence of a faster loading speed. And I was going to ask you actually, what is that, the kind of the red arrow with the circle around it?
So it's that second chart that you see on the bottom. That's actually a site that actually had their page load speed increase just incrementally, but they actually saw UX improvements in page views per visit, bounce rate decreases, and session duration improves, and you actually see the site's organic traffic spike quite a bit. And that's because essentially what Google is trying to accomplish with having faster page speed is better UX. So while page speed itself is an independent ranking factor, it's not on the same level as things like bounce rate, time on site, and page views per visit, which is really what you want to try to optimize for. So AMP really is a way that Google kind of packages up this idea of page speed and kind of directs it to publishers that may be distracted by looking at things like page speed in a bubble. There's a lot of publishers right now that are spending a lot of time and a lot of energy on page speed, and I think Google looks at AMP as, hey, stop spending your time here, spend time on your content. Here is AMP. AMP is going to make your site super fast, and you can stop having to worry about all these different things to try to make your site faster.
So AMP's going to help because it's going to speed things up, but there are other things that will affect your user experience metrics. That's what we're saying.
So the final call, test it.
Test it out. There is no way for us to kind of reassure you and say, yes, you definitely should. I think it's something that you need to test. Depending on the kind of vertical you're in, some news sites are going to need it more than others. We definitely recommend that it's something that you should test.
If you are trying to wait it out to see if it's going to go away, it's likely not going to go away. It's probably going to grow. So if you're basically on the fence because you're not sure if it's going to stick around, it's going to stick around. So if you're considering testing it, we strongly recommend it.
Well, there is a way that you can test it where you get the site indexed. So the Google Spider comes along and says, hey, have you got an AMP page for me for this search keyword? And it says, yes, here it is. And then you can get indexed without sort of jumping in and making all the pages AMP. So that is a way that you could sort of dip a toe and see how you're doing on the rankings.
So there's this other thing too, and maybe 2017 is a little early to start talking about this as something that will be implemented, but it is certainly something you're going to start to hear talked about quite a bit, and that is this idea of a progressive web app. So what is a progressive web app, John?
Progressive web apps is taking functionality from a mobile phone. So let's say, for example, your geolocation from the satellite data, GPS, and weaving that into a mobile experience. And before now, you've had to download an app on your phone and have it there when you want to have those mobile metrics or those sort of mobile enhancements available to you. And the idea is, if things are getting faster with AMP pages, well, there's a little bit more processor time available for doing other things. And progressive web apps is kind of, it's a way of not having to have a standalone app.
So Google is kind of defined this now as basically allowing sites to have a mobile URL, right, that provides kind of an in-app experience inside of a web browser, right?
That was a much better explanation than mine.
I'm into the art of simplification.
Yeah.
So this is something that you're going to probably start to hear about more. So if you have an app or have considered an app before, this is maybe where you should start to shift some of your thinking, is this idea of, is a progressive web app right for my site?
And discovery inside the web, what they call native app space. So basically, when it's the Apple, the iTunes store, or whether it's in the Android store, wherever it is, those discovery of apps in there is actually pretty tough.
Yeah.
If you're a web developer, to be able to get any visibility in there is difficult. And what Google are doing is giving the opportunity for publishers to give users all of this functionality without having them kind of basically start again inside the native app space.
So that's kind of how they work. They work very similar to the way we talked about it before. The way that a app works, it works like that in a web browser, and there would be very fast, like you said, just like
no dinosaurs.
Worth exploring this year.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I think is really, and we kind of touched on this a little bit with mobile specifically, but UX metrics in general will matter more in 2017. I think that is a clear trend that we started to see in 2016, but it's going to be overtaken even more as we start talking about, we're going to get into ad blocking and non-invasive ads and stuff like that a little bit later on. But Google's going to care about this in particular more than ever.
Yeah, and I guess by Google, we're talking about the Google search engine. And I mean, we've been talking about this stuff for a long time, but I'm getting the feeling in the whole industry that, particularly with the emergence, I mean, it's taken nobody by surprise that ad blocking has been increasing because of problems with being able to access content. So one thing that Google hasn't changed about their algorithm kind of updates is talking about user experience, and that is you can define user experience by measuring the bounce rate, the time on site, and page views per visit in Google Analytics, and you can do that on a per country basis. You can do it on an individual landing page basis from your top pages within Google Analytics, and then you can look at that on the device, which is what we said at the beginning, talking about mobile first. So all of these metrics together, they are not. It's not inside this kind of bubble called user experience, which somebody in a department somewhere should be caring about. Actually, all of this stuff matters way more than you would think, because actually now the whole ad world is waking up to the idea of user experience becoming a much more important factor of monetization than it has been.
And that's a big part of it too, right? This idea of these UX metrics playing a critical role in how a site is able to be monetized. And it happens on more than just a, one page static, everyone behaves one way. This actually happens on a per user basis, and every site is a little bit different. One of the things that I think is really interesting is this graph here where we've pulled some data from a particular site.
I think this is on a particular page, actually. So this was, on a particular landing page, and it's really just a snapshot of data. This is the sort of stuff that our data scientists look at on a daily basis, and the idea is that you're monitoring bounce rate and the number of impressions on a page, the number of ads on a page, and you can see that the bounce rate increase from 6 ads on a page to 8 or 9 is more than 4x. So we're not saying that there's a one-size-fits-all. Or,
this is just one particular page on one particular site.
But interestingly, I mean, I don't know how big the data set is on this. We only got this kind of last night. Was from 4 ads to 6 ads, actually the bounce rate comes down slightly. Mm-hmm. So thinking about bounce rate and monetization together, this is the sort of data that we see, and this is the sort of problems that we're looking to solve. And we think that by embracing this, even if you're not using the Zoic system, even looking at this yourselves, this is something that's going to give you an edge during this year.
And that's why it's so important to look at these UX metrics that you talked about before in correlation with things like monetization, because we're going to dig into this a little bit more as we move forward. But I think one of the other areas where we're starting to see the impact of things like UX on just in general the way that a website operates is in search. So we're seeing this right now, a major change. We wrote about it last week in our blog. Google has really cracked down on intrusive, what was originally reported as interstitial ads, but the truth is they've actually cracked down on all interstitial or intrusive pop-ups. So those pop-ups that jump up on a mobile page whenever you that are laying over the content, you can see these examples right here. These things are being penalized now. So the mobile version of your site is being labeled not mobile friendly. I want to emphasize that because that's been something that, if you have a mobile friendly site and it's mobile responsive, you think you've checked that box, it's good. If you've got mobile pop-ups, you've lost that. So it's really important now to start thinking about the fact that Google is taking into their own hands this idea of looking at your UX, because they're dictating it now, and it's because for a long time publishers have not necessarily looked at this on their own.
Well, and a lot of people, it's very easy, isn't it, to install a plugin in WordPress for my newsletter sign up, and you say, oh well, I need sign-ups for my newsletter, let's just collect some, and you don't know the effect on bounce rate. What is there to tell you in basically for any WordPress plugin, come to think about it, what is the effect on my overall metrics? So you've obviously got a result that you want, signups to newsletter database. But what is the payoff? And I think what's happening with Google now getting involved in this is to get people to focus more on those bounce rates by device, by page. And I think that everybody needs to look at this. It's happening right now.
So the other thing that I think is really important when we start talking about these UX metrics is the way that you look at them in correlation to how you monetize the pages of your website. So I think what's really common is that we've talked about this before in separate web events, but I think it's worth touching on again why this is so important outside of just the benefits of a search engine or whatever. It's important in the way you holistically look at your website, right?
And when you're trying to increase your revenue, bounce rates a high bounce rate prevents more pages from being seen. So here in this example, you've got the big red splat bounce. You've got one page and people leave. Now, let's say that the eCPM or the RPM for that landing page is $40. You could think, hey, I'm doing a really great job of monetization. And we see this all the time. We've been doing meetings here in London where we're meeting bigger publishing groups, and they are looking at RPM and effective CPM as their guiding metric. One of the problems that you've got with that is that you've got landing pages that may be generating more money from you for you on a session basis, but you're preventing that from happening because, unfortunately, you're spamming people out with too many ads on the first page of a user session. So and if you don't use the Zoic system, you can tag up pages with different tags on each of those subsequent pages after a landing page to do this yourself. But here's a good example of, what is it better to have a higher RPM or a lower RPM? Well, it depends on what is the session revenue. So, for example, those 3 pages have a $20 on average RPM, but it's giving you $60 per session. And actually, that means you're going to be making 50% more revenue than you would have done had you been focusing just on that one page and not looking at the landing page. So bounce rate and page views per visit are linked to earnings. And the way to iron all of that out is to forget about CPM and to focus on session earnings, because it takes that into account. And
that's what that EPMV is. It's estimated, or it's earnings per 1,000 visitors, right?
Yeah.
And so really what that metric does is it's this idea of we talked about UX being a bigger deal in 2017 in those metrics. What you want to start doing is combining the way that you look at your monetization and your UX together, and this is a way that you can start to pull that together. Because if you were just looking at the revenue in general, you would look at page 1 versus page 2 and say, page 1 is my clear best one. I should create more content like this. This is my best page.
That's right. It feeds back into your content creation strategy. If you're rewarding high bounce rate contributors to your site, let's say you've got an editor, and you can, if you're even doing this, looking at how much money they're making for you from their contributions, in other words, their ROI, and you're rewarding those kind of behaviors more than the longer engagement, the higher session duration, the higher page views per visit, you're actually focusing on the wrong metric. You're actually rewarding higher bounce rate, which is not what you want if you can get longer sessions.
And I think that leads us kind of into something that we talked about at the beginning as well, which is we started talking about brand. So we talked about kind of the, investing in content where you're looking at UX and monetization together. You're looking at basically trying to create better quality site, more long-term sustaining material. And I think that that's good for the brand of your site. So you may not have a brand like the New York Times or something that strong, but your site itself, there's this kind of trend towards quality. And I think the opposite of that is what we see in these things like these what we can only describe as bottom of the barrel native ads. So
literally bottom of the barrel.
Literally bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. So we've all seen them, and we have done testing. We can see the effect that native ads have on display ad revenue and how those things dilute each other. But really, this has all been in the news, hasn't it? We're talking about post-truth and this blurry line between real journalism. The President of the United States is saying you're fake news. That if you're not going for quality, then you can see that this is being looked at really closely, particularly by Facebook. If you rely on Facebook as a source of visitors, they are cracking down on this, and also obviously Google as well. So it's understanding why are users on your site, what is their affinity to you. Not everybody has got a heritage brand, but go for quality, because quality is going to reward you in the long term, because those user experience metrics will put you ahead of your competition when you're looking at like for like.
And so if you're, I think there's two ways to look at this. If you're a large publisher, the New York Times and several others have written stories about this year about the negative effect that things like bottom-of-the-barrel native ads have had on their brand, right? This idea that these things are lower quality, and it speaks to the quality and the legitimacy of their content. But then I think even for smaller publishers, you mentioned this before, this idea that they dilute other ads on the page and they potentially could be harming the quality of your site. So it's not to say that, hey, you need to get rid of native ads. It's just saying the trend this year for 2017 is we're going to maybe start to see the bottoming out of the bottom of the barrel native ads, right?
Yeah, I think that I think it's already beginning to happen, right now.
And I think one of the things that kind of is Google's response to this is Google is providing their own programmatic native ads.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what this is?
I had to kind of read this about 3 times. Basically, Google have come up with a way for publishers to style advertising in a way that looks like a native ad.
Yeah.
And so the 2 examples they've given here, and we're going to put this in the show notes at the end so that you can follow the link and go and read about this yourself. But they're coming out with a product which effectively at the moment, let's look at the top of these things. You've got the advertiser, they produce a creative. It goes as traffic by double click and goes through a bidding auction and then is shown to the user. In this, what they're calling programmatic native, they're giving components, so an image, a title, a URL, and then allowing the Google system to be able to choose from some of those components and then to traffic it and for it to show. So Google is reserving the right to make your ads, make ads look a little bit more like content, but you're definitely not allowed to make content look like ads. Hope that's clear. I mean, it's actually, I think it's actually a really good thing, because I mean, we've seen how this happens automatically with AdSense. AdSense styling, mirroring the page. I think everybody's seen that. It is, I would say, there is the slurring of the line between ads content, but that's happening already where you have sort of sponsored content and content marketing that you write about.
It does seem to be a higher quality response to things like these bottom of the barrel native ads. So you're seeing the industry sort of react to this kind of trend.
And it puts a bit of control back in the publisher's kind of domain, because something that we heard about a couple of months ago was some of these native providers are actually cooking their publishers and showing racier ads to the rest of their audience, but not to the publishers who've logged in from the dashboard. So clear cookies, use incognito, go check your site out, see what kind of ads are showing.
So all of this move towards better quality, John, a lot of it is a response to ad blocking, right?
Yes, and ad blocking comes up again and again and again at sort of publisher seminars and publisher get-togethers, when really it's a frightening situation, because we have the ad economy, which is paying for all of this content, and fantastic quality content it is, and yet subscription revenues, when you ask visitors to subscribe to, let's say, for example, a news source, it's actually really hard to get them to fork out for it. So Coalition for Better Ads, I mean, that's some of the biggest advertisers.
Procter & Gamble, Facebook,
Unilever,
IAB,
they're all getting together to say, let's try and determine, try and define what acceptable ads are. And I mean, I'm behind it, but I have a problem with it as well, because if you're going to define acceptable ads by some sort of subjective metric that says this ad should be here and not here, how do you know? For every site on the internet. Now, I think this is what we've discovered, and we've got the benefit of all of this data, which maybe a lot of these players don't have, is how are these ads all affecting user experience, like the actual user experience on that page alone. Let's say just that page. How do these ads affect it? So an acceptable ad, in my opinion, would be one that isn't negatively affecting user experience. Now, how do you define that? It's all to do with data, not to do with people sitting around in a boardroom trying to decide what looks nice to them or not.
And I think one of the things that if you're looking for what's going to happen with ad blocking this year, I think what you should look for is industry regulation and direction around things like this, like acceptable ads, maybe some different policies. We're already starting to see it with the Google interstitial penalty that we talked about a little bit earlier, but I would expect to see maybe some more things like that and some more direction, because that seems to be all of the both advertisers and providers' response to the rise of ad blocking, which they are largely kind of they're boxing out because they to shed some light on how ad blocking is funded, it's through ads, right, John?
It's through ads, yeah. Basically, it's shakedown. You've got these ad blockers, and that what they will do is allow certain ads through in exchange for a cut of the revenue, and that's how they get funded. The reason they're able to do that is by saying, well, we put in calm ads. So actually, this sort of plays into the whole idea of ads being no longer static, but a movable feast according to the response from the users, which actually, obviously, we're in favor of, because that's what our system is doing.
So if you don't care about your brand, right? So if we're looking at this and say, well, listen, my site, I'm not as worried about the brand. You probably should care about legitimacy. As you mentioned before, we saw this rise of this term fake news. But the truth is that every platform, whether it's at Google or Facebook, Google recently said they're banning AdSense for fake news sites, which has not been very clearly defined. It's kind of like it's
really hard, isn't it, to define what is fake news, because what's satire, like The Onion or Private Eye in the UK, what is satire and what is actual fake news? It's
true.
Really hard. Then you've got to become the content police.
And I don't think that either of these platforms want to become the content police, but I think the one thing that is a trend is that we haven't seen the end of this string, which is going to be pulled, and that is that all of these platforms want to improve the quality of the content that they make available to their users.
Yes. Yeah, and I think algorithm changes, without a bank of reviewers, it's really tough to do. What you've got to do is look at the really easy wins when you're trying to police this kind of stuff, like plagiarism, or a deliberately deceptive ad, bait and switch. So there isn't an easy way of getting. The plethora of content that's out there and the way that things have changed in this last year. It's something for everybody to look out for, but this guiding principle of quality, keep back to those user metrics that you can measure.
So things that are poor quality are things like thin content. If you have poor quality native ads on your site that are beyond racy, you could be in violation of Google policy. In some cases, we've talked about this a little bit before. Yeah,
that's right. And you can go back on our YouTube channel and look at the presentation I gave about Google policy and how to stay safe and good with Google. If you get on the wrong side of Google, you can be kicked out and you're not allowed back in and you lose your money. So don't mess around with this. So here's an example. Here are the 15 most scandalous celebrity outfits, and where is the content? It's just ads. And there is helpfully an arrow. And maybe I should click on that. And of course, this is all deceptive stuff. I think most publishers understand they're going to eventually get found out for this kind of thing, and this generation of mistrust is feeding into the uptake of ad blockers. So it's not helping anyone. You might make a quick buck, but you could lose it all in
the industry, and everything we're talking about that is really a response to a lot of these practices, and so we're seeing the end of it. But I think beyond just fake news or fake content, what we're starting to see now too is you have to watch out for fake ads too, right? So what's a fake ad?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's what you click on something and where you land is not what you were expecting. And it's actually, when we were looking at those examples of bottom of the barrel ads, some of those particularly racier, high click images, they just rotate the copy through with the same image. So it looks exactly that. It's all it is designed to do is just get somebody's eyes to go over here and go, oh, what is that? I wondered what these weird tips were for reducing belly fat. Some of those things don't work anymore, so they put some sort of bait in there, and then they'll send you, for example, in this, it'll be some kind of free offer they try to legitimize it by using a brand name. So Tide is obviously a huge brand name in the States.
So how do you protect yourself against these fake ads, John?
Use quality providers. There isn't any other way, really. And there is, I think we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, there is a way that the industry is reacting to this in order for, you know, the little blue triangle in the corner, there is a way for you to be able to report bad ads. So trying to keep to providers of ads or demand sources that provide a feedback mechanism to report bad ads. Because it's not just things like this. This is a very elementary example. Another one would be you click on an ad and it takes you immediately through to the App Store to download, you know, Candy Crush or whatever it might be. Those are so annoying. They're so annoying, and they're really hard to catch.
Don't you want to play Candy Crush?
I do want to play Candy Crush, but I was interested in that article that I thought I was going to read.
About the meltdown that Hillary Clinton had, and you want to see her reaction in the video. A shocking video that you can't wait to see.
And I think as an industry, we're going to see a lot of this stuff getting stamped out. There's going to be some, there's going to be a backlash on this, and getting on top of it.
So, but I think it's not just the fraud that that you know users potentially could have to deal with from an advertiser or fake news. You actually have to. There's a growing number of content thieves out there, right? So people that are taking your content from your website and reproducing it themselves, right?
Yes, and I mean this used to be just for very high CPC or PPC keywords. Suddenly a mirror site would would pop up, and you would see your traffic go down, and somehow they were able to sort of pull your rankings away. Google search engine's really actually a lot smarter than that. So what's happening with that we've seen in the last few months is something that's trending. Let's say, for example, in Facebook, the content thieves will go, "Hey, that's a good article. It's being shared a lot. I'm going to just take it all, copy it, put it on my site, and then I'm going to go and buy some Facebook ads, or I'm going to go to a native ad network and I'm going to use some clickbaiting stuff. I'm going to go to peer-to-peer networks. I'm just going to blast as many visitors as I possibly can to these pages because I know somebody's already done my job for me by producing decent quality content. And what you have to do is to look out for it. And there is a way for you to do that. You can have DMCA takedown notices. There's a lot of good plagiarism detectors out there. SiteSpect, I think, is one. And what you can do is you can go to the registrar and the host and say, these guys are plagiarizing my legitimate site. I want these guys warned and taken down.
And that actually will take them down. So a lot of times you can look at content on the internet and say, those people are stealing my content. There must be nothing I can do about it. You actually can. You can prove that you are the owner and proprietor and generator of that content, and you can actually have those sites taken down.
A quick way of doing it actually is to just grab a random piece of text within your original content, throw it into Google search engine, and see if you're coming up top. You should be coming up top because obviously it's your original content.
So before we kind of close the door on this kind of fake news, fake ads, fake content, there's actually kind of an interesting lesson that we can learn from this fake news, and that is there was a study done, and it was actually mainstream, quote unquote mainstream, which in this case it was actually major news sites have almost double the number of ad tech as fake news sites. And what's really interesting about the study, John, is they actually were trying to find differences between a fake news site and a regular news site, things that they could use to maybe draw that line. You know, we're talking about that's a fuzzy line. And they said, well, one of the easiest lines that we can draw is the amount of ad tech that the mainstream sites uses versus fake ones. And what was interesting about it is the fake news sites in a lot of these cases were more profitable, they were leaner, and you can see here they were actually lighter as well and faster.
Yes.
And so in a lot of these cases, one of the things that you found out was that ad tech in a lot of these cases was very much literally weighing down these mainstream news sites.
Yeah, and it's an indicator of why. I mean, these guys are kind of obviously they're scammers, right? So we don't condone that, but there is something to learn in all this, which is if you have lighter pages and they run faster and you don't have as many ad tags and you don't have data management platforms like sucking up processor time on mobile devices. I mean, some of these mainstream news sites have 60, 80 tags on a page. That's an enormous burden to be chugging through in the background, whereas what they're doing is they're giving the user effectively what they want, which is this news. Now, it might be fake news, that's bad, but there is a kernel of goodness in all of this, which is for you to be able to kind of take what these guys are doing and actually apply it to your own site. And
lean out your site, because there is obviously, we've talked about this before with ad tech, but there's a lot of it out there, and some of it is helping, some of it is helping very little, and then some of it is probably hurting you.
Yeah, and let's be fair on the big publishers here. They quite often have sales teams, they have data, they have audience extension. What they're trying to do is they're trying to give themselves as many possible ways to increase the demand for their inventory. The trouble is, by doing that, you're quite often getting your own way. I mean, they have to work with big ad agencies, and big ad agencies have to do viewability monitoring and reporting. That's a burden that these guys never had. So, but at what point do you say, I'm not going to do that? And I guess this is something that will play out this year.
So speaking of things that are going to play out this year, there are some new terms to know in 2017. So if you're on the ad ops side of things, this is one you've probably started to hear buzzing a little bit more, especially at the end of 2016. But if you're not, you probably haven't heard this. But server-to-server bidding is kind of the next evolution of header bidding, right, John?
Yeah, so header bidding last year had a big push forward. It was called header bidding because it's in the head part of the HTML. So what it's doing is it's calling out a pre-bid, if you like, before the main real-time bidding auction that's going to go on for an ad placement. And the trouble with that was that it would slow down the page. You get latency and the ads loading slower. It's just, worse. And so I'm feeling so erudite today. But what the benefit of header bidding is that it's giving the opportunity to get more of a level playing field in some of these environments where the header bidding is happening.
It's bidding in real time for inventory.
Sorry, it's slightly ahead actually. It's a pre-bid, but server to server is taking that whole process and putting it before the page load. So on the server side for the page, and of course then you haven't got latency problems, and you still get the benefit. And of course that's the Zoic system is built server side for this very reason, that you don't want lots of like if this then that going back and forward in the page, because it's just slowing everything down. And so the incremental benefit from a higher header bid, and you've got to unpick as well the difference between what header bidder says they're going to give you and what you get. All of this is difficult to unpick. But server to server is something to look out for. I think a lot of the current header bidders are embracing that. We certainly embrace it because I think it's definitely good to have less stuff going on in the page.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that if you're looking at this and you haven't gotten into header bidding yet, or have concerns about it, or thinking about server to server, or learning about it just now, that this isn't the final evolution of these things either.
No, this is another evolution, and
next year there'll probably be a further evolution of this process.
Pre server to server bidding. How about that?
And that's one of the reasons why we talk about this idea of what's called mediation, and this is becoming more and more popular. And it's the idea that basically, as a publisher, you just want to have the networks that are competing for your inventory to play on a fair playing field, and for you to be able to basically get the best bids for your inventory. And mediation basically says we're going to bring all the partners to the table, and they're going to compete, and then the top bids are going to win.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether the relationship is through a testing partner like Zoic, or whether no matter what it is, you should be able to bring as many demand partners to the table as you possibly can.
So I think we're going to see this grow in popularity this year, this idea of more publishers implementing mediation on their site. Also, I think we're going to hear the term non-invasive ads. Probably we've already said it once, so if you haven't heard, you've heard it at least once this year now, and now you've heard it twice. Non-invasive ads.
Non-invasive ads. I mean, these are not disruptive ads. There's really annoying ones that start playing audio. And quite often they're the sort of malware. The malware
Everybody
ones.
likes those ads,
and
right?
you can't get rid of it, and it keeps popping up with new things. That is the definition of a disruptive ad. And really lean, what you call lean standards. That's something that's been put together by IAB worldwide, and it's really about making the file size light. Don't forget, processors on phones they're increasing, the same as all computers, but you don't want to be bogging down a page. You want it to be encrypted. You want ad choices so that people can opt out of retargeting, and you want these non-invasive ads, and they call that LEAN, lean. So light, encrypted, ad choices, and non-invasive. So these are things that are coming kind of from these cooperative bodies like the IAB, and I'm definitely behind it, because what we don't want is bad ads coming in and you
polluting the environment or the
exactly,
ecosystem. We've heard about this before.
That's right. And it's actually hard to catch them, but by having these standards and making sure that they're policed, I think it's actually a good thing.
So if in case you've kind of gotten pulled out and you're saying, hey, I don't want to hear more about this ad technology, I really want to know about growing my traffic this year or marketing my site, how will these top publishers grow sites this year? So I'm going to give you my opinion on some of the strategies that I think the top publishers are going to use this year to grow their sites. Some of these things I've talked about before. One, and this is one that I emphasize all the time, it is to spend time augmenting your existing content so that it will rank higher for keywords that you already ranked for in organic search, but keywords that you rank for on page 2 or 3 of search results. So right now, there are a number of keywords that you likely rank for in organic search on page 2 and 3. And in many cases, this is content, or these are keywords that you may not have originally even created the content to rank for. So what you can do now is go in and augment, not change, but add to that existing content so that you will rank higher for these additional keywords because you're already ranking these. It's a easier and safer way to invest your time in the content on your site than to create whole new content.
So, I mean, basically, it's a landing page that you're augmenting. Let's say, for an example, you're coming up number 8 for a particular keyword. That landing page that it already exists, working that page and augmenting the content so that you can basically,
That's right, especially if that's content where you may have not originally thought that was the keyword that you were going to rank for. And so you can go in and say, I'm going to add a whole section to this piece of content about this particular subject because maybe it's still relevant. I'm going to add some images and really perk this up. And now I'm going to boost my ranking for this particular content. I only had to maybe add a paragraph's worth of content. And I know that I'm going to get a boost out of it as opposed to creating new content, which is a little bit more like you kind of hope and pray in some cases.
And then the spider will go back and say, oh, the page has changed.
It's longer. The site metrics will change as well because hopefully you have greater time on site, less bounce rate for that particular key term, a lot of things like that. So that's why that strategy, I think you're going to continue to see it grow in popularity this year because it is the truest of true wide hat techniques because you are simply looking at how users are finding your site. You're finding basically those keywords you're having to look at and say, they're not quite getting what they want when they're searching these things and they find my site. So what I'm going to do now is make those results better so that I'm going to make this content better for those users. I also think that we're going to see an increase in the amount of publishers that are using some of the traditional B2B marketing practices in their outreach strategy. So things like email marketing and building newsletters and things like that. Whenever you lose the ability to do things like pop-ups, even if they were signing up for newsletters, you still want to drive your best users and your return visitors back to your content because you may be thinking to yourself, I don't want to email my users. They return anyways and always look at my content because I have great content. Well, they don't always return. And wouldn't it be great that whenever you publish new stuff that you could coax your return visitors that love your content back to your site and not on a daily basis or maybe even a weekly basis, but at least on a monthly basis, drive users back to your site, specifically these posts that you've potentially augmented with new content so that you can get Google to crawl it quickly and see that, hey, users are spending more time on this page. You should take a closer look at how it ranks for these particular keywords.
And that's kind of going back to what we're talking about with brand and, getting engagement over the long term. And, I've heard about how advertisers are investigating, how many minutes can I get with these eyeballs, with these people? And the more your attractiveness is sort of going up, by using some of those things like getting people back via an email send, that's going to help your overall metric of more
That's right.
time, more time in front of your content, therefore in front of the ads.
And I think that this is something in general that we need to do a better job of, but it's providing comprehensive data-driven metrics and things like that too. A lot of things we do, not just with content, but with things with social media. I've talked to a couple publishers that say, I'm just not getting out of social media what I want. And I think a lot of times it's because we have a very rudimentary strategy. We're not looking at data as it relates to post engagement. And I think it's worth looking at things like paid promotions, paid tweets, boosted posts, and Facebook and things like that, not because you're going to see a return on ad clicks or something like that on your pages, but because you can potentially drive the right kinds of users to your pages this way, improve your user experience metrics on those pages, and also get better data about what kind of content your users from social media like and don't like.
Yes.
It's going to give you a lot of information that you want to see, and it can be for very small investments. I'm not talking about huge paid campaigns. I'm talking about very small investments in your new content.
Yeah, like $100 from your top keyword that might have 60,000 searches and can generate a lot of insight for you. I mean, I think we'll probably dig into that a little bit more. My things, and by the way, those items that Tyler just mentioned, I mean, you've written about those in like a ton of detail on the Zoic blog. So
yeah, if you don't read the Zoic blog, I strongly encourage you to do it. Pretty much everything that we've talked about here, we have further detail on, and you can go and kind of read. But very specifically, those 3 bullets. Yeah, there's some really great content on the blog.
So the things that I would suggest that big publishers employing is session earnings, and I think you're already seeing that now. We call it as a true north metric for monetization because it is also including bounce rate and page views per visit. But it's been used by the games industry for a very long time, average revenue per user, ARPU. It's about time that publishers use their own metric to look at their own success instead of using an advertiser metric, which is CPM. Effectively, that's what people use. I think that this year, session earnings is going to sort of float to the top. More and more publishers I talk to are doing this themselves. You basically get all your money divided by the number of sessions per 1,000, and then you've got a metric that will take you through the seasons. And
you can Google how to calculate ePMV, or you can know that it's pretty simple. It's the amount of earnings your site makes divided by 1,000 visitors.
Yeah, that's it. It's easy. So getting away from RPM, as I talked about with the landing pages, looking at landing page revenue and not per page revenue, and then getting away from CPMs and looking at overall value to the business, which is basically how much money you're making for how many visitors. That landing page thing, that determines your engagement, and your engagement into your quality, it speaks to your quality. And I think the biggest thing that we're talking about today is really obviously mobile and also quality. Quality is really important, and it's hard to gauge, but if those user experience metrics are improving for the keywords that you rank for, you will increase your site this year. Like, there is no way that you will not, because if you think about it like this, you've got Google. Let's say Google.com is ranking 2 keywords, number 1 and number 2. It is looking at the number of bounces from that first example. So you're number 1 in Google, you get, I don't know what the percentage is. It's pretty high, isn't it? It's about 50% of the clicks, something like that.
32% of traffic goes to the number 1 result.
To the number 1 result. And then number 2 is what, 16, I'm guessing?
It's about 16%.
So it sort of goes down as a curve like this. That bounce rate, whether people come back to Google looking for that keyword again, is a ranking signal. You have to look at this really on a granular level. So doing that, getting that right, you're going to grow because you will just get up the rankings compared to your competitors. And then looking at all this from a mobile perspective, mobile. I think I've said mobile a lot. AMP, keeping your site clean, not having a ton of JavaScript going back and forward, or embracing AMP. These are the things that will keep you fast and keep your users happy.
So basically, John, if your mobile strategy for the upcoming year is I'm going to make sure my site remains mobile friendly, it's probably not good enough. You're looking to grow your site. You probably want a more aggressive strategy.
You've got to be optimizing, and you've got to know these metrics. Otherwise, you can't if you can't measure it, you can't do it, right?
So some other clever hacks, we actually had members of our team contribute some of these.
I love this.
This one's actually really clever. So one of the things you can do, so if you have a high volume search term that you rank organically for, so let's say it's 100,000 visitors a month come from a particular search term, and you're ranking currently number 4 for it. Well, that number 1, number 2, number 3 ranking is high value property, right?
Yeah.
And so what you can actually do is you can use AdWords search ads targeted at those keywords that you're trying to rank for, and you can actually test multiple headlines and meta descriptions and see how those paid ones do, and you can look at their click-through rates. And the reason why this is important is Google looks at click-through rate inside of the search results. They say they don't, but they've done tons of studies that prove that the search results that have the highest click-through rates tend to do better, and the rankings change accordingly based on click-through rates. So what you can do is look at what click-through rates were for the test that you ran in AdWords, and you can spend just a couple bucks to do this, and then you can modify your organic results with those tested headlines and meta descriptions to improve your click-through rate organically, which will boost you up the rankings for these really high volume keywords. It's a really smart strategy.
It is a really smart. It took me a second telling it to get it. So basically what it is when you have a keyword that is popping up in Google, remember we're talking about mobile here, the meta description of that keyword, you can test that meta description as an ad inside AdWords.
In the title.
In the title. So it's basically the same keyword, different meta description. And that is going to give you a wet hat solution for matching what is effectively the
It's
user's
basically
intent.
a hack to A/B test meta descriptions
Yes.
and headlines in your search results, because there's really no other way to do that where you're going to actually see click-through rates from Google. And this is kind of a way you can spend a couple bucks and hack that. So instead of spending money on some kind of A/B testing headline meta description software product that I don't know if it exists or not, you can essentially use AdWords to do the same thing. Yeah. And I think ultimately the other bullet is, we talk about this quite a bit, but it's measure the ROI on your content. And we've talked about this a little bit, but it's more than just trying to figure out which articles are making you the most money. We've talked about you can do this with the landing pages. Really taking all of this in and really understanding a better idea of how your content is making money, how long it takes you to produce it, so that you can be a smarter investor in it. So we're talking about growing your site. View it as a business. If you understand the cost related to your business, you may learn that the ROI is actually quicker on your content than you might thought, and you may want to pay or hire someone to write additional content like that content, especially if you are able to do this landing page thing.
Yeah, that's right. So content writing and editing, those two things combined, whether you're editing yourself or writing yourself, but looking at how what is the return for you, and you can do this yourself by looking at those top pages and basically how much money they make. So it's something that all publishers should know. Who are my top writers, and who are my top writers for earnings, who are my top writers for engagement.
So to kind of summarize a lot of the things we've talked about today, because we've been all over the board, John.
Yes, sorry folks, I hope you're still with us.
2017 is a long year. We wanted to make sure that you had enough. Yeah. So you should avoid shortcuts and gimmicks like thin content. A lot of the strategies that people have kind of used to try to, if there's, for lack of a better term, to hack the game or cheat the game, those things are going to be cracked down harder in 2017 than they've ever been cracked down on before.
Yes.
You should keep your ad sizes and content between a 50-50 split on all device sizes. So we talked a little bit about content balance with ads, but more specifically, our strong recommendation is at least a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
On all device sizes.
Don't do what that is happening on that group. If those green things were ads, that would be bad. But basically, think about mobile. 50-50 split content to ads. No more than 50% ads. We definitely don't want that.
Monitor your content for theft. So we talked about the ability to do a DMAC takedown. This is more prevalent than it's ever been before. So even if you are a smaller site, this is worth looking at. Beware of fake ads. So talked about this a little bit as well.
Clear cookies. Go and look at your site in incognito. See if you can discover any and stamp them out. Report them. Use those feedback mechanisms like ad choices.
Keep an eye on native ads that you're displaying on your site and how they're affecting user behavior, user metrics. and also kind of how the industry trends towards those sort of things.
Yeah, some of those native providers are now giving you an R-rated or 13 rated or whatever. I would definitely be choosing the 13. It depends on your type of vertical. So obviously we've got to put in all sorts of caveats here, but it is something to keep an eye on, particularly if you're not monitoring the effect of native ads on bounce rate and native ads on display revenue.
Yeah, and to consider the fact that Google is bringing to the table these programmatic native ads as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be helpful.
And then the last one is, we've hounded this in 3 different levels today, but use your landing pages to discover what your best content is. Don't look at RPMs, look at landing pages as a way to determine your best earnings per 1,000 visitors, and then also, ultimately that's going to tell you what your best content is.
Yes, that's easy to do.
And there's a reward for those who navigate 2017 properly, because what we've seen is that, we have a free ad index. If you go to adrevenueindex.zoic.com, we show you basically how sites from across the world, how they're earning, and we index their scores so it's a relative score, and you can see how ad earnings are going throughout the year. So, things change seasonally, but we can see the peak time from last year to the peak time in this year is higher.
Yeah, that's right. And the whole industry is growing, guys, and programmatic is basically still forging ahead. You're going to make a lot more money from programmatic going forward, and that's basically the truth. So you've got plenty of months to get your traffic up before the really boom time, and you'll be able to look at that index, and if your traffic is up, you get all of those extra benefits multiplied. So we're not just talking about more traffic, we're talking about more money as well at the end, towards the end of the year.
So our key takeaways for 2017: mobile UX has to be a top priority.
There is no other way around it. You have to be spending the majority of your time looking at your mobile user experience, bounce rate, time on site, page views per visit on mobile, looking at your ad combinations, doing testing, looking at your landing pages, all of this on a mobile-centric way.
It's been harped on so much throughout this thing, but it's quality content, better user experiences, and the utilization of things like holistic metrics, things that are looking at your site as a whole, things that aren't advertiser metrics. These are the winning targets for you this year. So you should be looking at how do you improve the quality of your content, how do you improve user experiences, bounce rate, session duration, page views per visit, and the utilization of things like earnings per 1,000 visitors is a way of making sure that you're on the straight and narrow. If you do those 3 things, John, it's hard to say that you won't grow your site in 2017.
Yes, that's correct. If your bounce rate has come down on mobile for a particular keyword, I cannot see why you would not grow.
And then the last one is have UX, brand, and monetization goals.
Have some goals. If you don't write it down, just say to yourself, right, okay, what's going to be my target this year? Let's see how we can go about doing that. Chop it down into manageable chunks, take them on one at a time. But bear in mind, all those 3 things have an effect on each other.
And so that's it. I know that this has been a long web event, but we enjoyed sharing with you all these different strategies for 2017. Before we go any further, I want to mention that because it was such a long topic that we were discussing this year, it's the whole year, guys. We got it in less than an hour.
We do, just over an hour. Yeah.
And so basically what we want to try to accomplish with this is if you guys have questions related to the content that we have today, please just submit them. And what we will do is we will produce a second video that just answers your questions from the event. And we will send those out to everyone that has been on the web event afterwards via email. So thank you. If you guys enjoyed the content today, realize that John and I have a podcast called The Publisher Lab. We have over 12 episodes. We'll have a 13th one being published later this week that include content on SEO, basically everything that it means to be a publisher. We talk about it, and we kind of just get into depth, and we have guests from Google and all over the place.
We've got some great guests coming on the show soon as well. Some of the guys from Bulletin and I think the Financial Times are coming on.
So it's pretty exciting stuff. So if you guys have questions, submit them in the box. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys on the podcast. And if you're wondering about a recording or the deck, they get sent to you automatically. I'll send them your way as soon as this thing's done rendering. It's a long video, so just give it a couple minutes, and I'm sure you guys will have it. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm Tyler Bishop. This is John Cole.
John Cole, thank you very much for watching. Cheers.